What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Cold Takes from the Land. This one is going to be a little different. It's just me by myself. Our lovely Austin is not with me today. The guy with the much deeper, sexier voice than me. He's a busy guy, so he's not able to do this one with me today. Also, the whole, as you can tell by what you're seeing on the screen, the rookie prospects, the college guys, he's not as well in tuned as I am with that stuff. So he said, go ahead and let me go solo on this one. So it would be just me. And as you guys can see, I'm going to essentially rank my top 10 of the rookie quarterback prospects going into the 2025 draft that's happening here in a little under a month now, or it might be exactly a month. I'm not sure. I can't remember the exact date. But I'm excited to get into this. This is just my general top 10 on how I feel. This is swayed a bit specifically towards how I feel about them in Cleveland. If it's a different team, different situation, a few rankings might slightly change, but I'm a Browns fan. We're Browns fans, so this is how I feel. And these are my top 10 prospects. So I almost decided to make it 9 because there's only 9 guys here who I really feel like have a smidgen of a chance to get drafted by the Browns. But my number 10, you can call it an honorable mention if you want, is going to be Curtis Rourke out of Indiana. This may be a little biased. He was an Ohio University guy for the first few years of his college career. Not a whole lot to say about him. He's just a kind of stereotypical big, stocky, old-school pocket passer. He has a really strong arm. He can make just about any throw. If you look at some of the throws he made, especially at Indiana with the elevated competition in the Big Ten, he performed pretty well for the most part, except against some of the better teams. He did start to have some struggles, but does have a cannon for an arm, and it was really fun to watch. It almost kind of reminds you of like a Joe Flacco in a way sometimes. Big kid. I don't have the exact measurements right in front of me, but he's a big kid. The main concerns start with, for one, he played on a torn ACL all year, and he just got surgery, I think, back in like January. So he's not going to be ready to go until like at the fastest maybe preseason. I know ACL tears become less and less major as time goes on with progression of modern medicine and rehab and whatnot. But more of a project type guy. This is a guy where if he was like 2021 after only 2 years of college, you'd be a lot more intrigued. But he's going to turn 25 during the season, and because of that, you have a 25-year-old guy who, as you can see by some of the basic points I put here, he's not always the most accurate passer. He can spray a lot of throws. Sometimes is a little overconfident in that arm. And then on top of that, he can force some throws into coverage sometimes, like I said, kind of relying on that big arm too much. And also, he's just not a very mobile guy, which is fine. I mean, you can always work around that. But on top of it, like I said, he just tore his ACL, played on it for a season, and then getting surgery, whatnot. He'll be coming back as a 25-year-old rookie, fresh off an ACL tear for a guy that's already not very mobile. So just a lot of concerns. That's why he's going to be drafted really late. I mean, I could see a world where he doesn't even get drafted just because of the fact that he's going to be 25. It's coming off an injury, and is a lot more of a raw prospect. Typically, the older rookies you expect a certain level of like polish, if that makes sense, to their game. I kind of mentioned that with a couple of these other guys later. But just an intriguing guy. Like I said, would be a lot more interesting if he was like 21 years old. But the comfortable area I'd want to draft him is at the earliest, late in the 5th, preferably like early 6th, maybe even mid 6th round, just as a dart throw type guy. This is clearly a guy that's only going to get drafted if we go Abdul Carter at 2, go like running back, offensive line with some of the earlier mid-round picks, and then maybe the quarterbacks go a little earlier than expected. So then there's not a lot of guys left on the board, so you just throw a dart throw. Hey, let's get the Indiana kid with a big arm. So not a super likely guy, but just wanted to throw him in here just to mention him. But next up, my QB9 is going to be Quinn Ewers. Interesting prospect, redshirt junior out of Texas. Just about everybody knows this kid. Formerly went to Ohio State. I was really excited about him coming out of high school. As you can put, one of my positives is he was one of the top dudes coming out of high school. And I remember there was a lot of buzz around him when he committed to Ohio State. But he ended up transferring to Texas, never ended up actually even starting for Ohio State, I don't believe. And just had he had a good college career, but kind of an underwhelming college career. He was touted as a guy who can make all the throws, has really solid arm talent, and is just a bit ahead of the curve compared to a lot of other guys in his class. And he was a guy who was expected, if all things go well, I'm pretty sure even as recent as like early on in this college season, or maybe like a little earlier, like in the off season going into 2024, he could have potentially been a first-round pick. But his last year at Texas was a bit concerning. The thing with him is he's just all over the place. He's super inconsistent. His arm talent, as I say on here on screen, he's got wildly inconsistent arm talent. What I mean by that is and that's another thing with the positives, he'll make some crazy, as I put, wow throws, where he puts some throws in spots, drops a ball in an area where you're just like, that doesn't make sense that a quarterback can do that. He makes some of the most ridiculous throws you can see of some of these guys. And when you stack all 10 of these QBs and look at their games and just put like their 5 most difficult throws they made, Ewers might have the best of any of those guys. I mean, he's right up there with a couple others, but he might be the best in terms of some of his most high difficulty, really pro level throws. But then you also watch him over the course of a game and he'll throw a lot of noodle balls. Like, it was just, arm strength looks weak, the ball hangs in the air way too long, it looks like a pick six waiting to happen, and combine that with the fact that he does kind of stare down reads sometimes, and he'll just kind of force a ball anyway, even though there's coverage there, just because he already decided this is where I'm going with the ball. He also doesn't manage the pocket very well. When pressure comes, he doesn't move properly. He doesn't navigate the pocket the best. There are moments where he does. It's part of the inconsistency thing. But then, like I put in here, he had really good performances against like Alabama. I think that was in 2023, where he looked like the guy we thought he would be, looked like the best quarterback in college football. And then when they played Michigan, I believe this season, same thing. He looked really, really good. But then he has games where he's just so disappointing, where you look at him and you're like, this kid isn't even an NFL backup level quarterback. So the thing with him is, he's the most inconsistent guy in the class. He's either one of the 5 best QBs in this class, or he's not even in like the top 15. It's very all over the place, and that's just a hard thing to trust as a pro. On top of that, he was on a great team in Texas, who probably had the best roster in college football outside of Ohio State, at least in my opinion, and kind of underachieved there. At least to me, he underachieved. I mean, they were like a national championship team or bust, and they got mollywopped pretty early on. And just a disappointing college career for Quinn Ewers. He still obviously has some of that potential. That's why I put he'd be an intriguing guy in the 5th round. If you took him late in the 4th, depending on situation and whatnot, there might be some teams that do that. But again, he's a guy I wouldn't be shocked if he's there in the 6th. But I imagine he'll get drafted around earliest 4th, latest early 6th round. I put 5th round general just as an area I'd be willing to draft him. Interesting guy, like I said, underwhelming career. On top of it, when he got hurt, Arch Manning came in and looked better. Granted, Arch Manning might be like a ridiculous quarterback prospect here in the next year or two, so we'll see about that. But yeah, just another interesting guy, another guy who's more of a dart throw late in the draft, where it could pay off if he's in the right situation, but if he goes to the wrong situation and plays too early, and that inconsistency comes out, he could flame out pretty fast. But with that, let's move into our QB8. I got Dillon Gabriel out of Oregon. Really interesting prospect here. For one, the obvious thing, super undersized. He's tiny. He's like 5'11", maybe 5'10". I think he's 5'11". He's got a decent build to him, but just a smaller guy. Doesn't have a very big arm, very limited arm talent, so that immediately limits the throws he can make in the league. And I put in here in the negatives is there's a lack of a lot of big-time, big-game throws. It's a lot of routine throws, throws in the middle of the field well, the short intermediate game, a lot of quick throws, RPOs. He's going to be really good at. So kind of an interesting skill set. On top of it, he's a lefty, which is interesting, and you may not think about it as much, but there is a little bit of a difficulty with a lefty quarterback because you kind of have to flip your offense in a way, because immediately now your right tackle is your blindside blocker as opposed to your left tackle, so you got to kind of switch up things. So also depends if an offensive coordinator or head coach is willing to do that. But he played at 3 different schools, produced everywhere, played really well everywhere, and then of course ended in Oregon, one of the best teams in the country, beat Ohio State in the regular season. Obviously, shout out OHIO. Killed him in the college football playoff. But this guy, he manages a game really well. This guy screams like high level backup to me. Like, he reminds me a lot of like a, what's a good way to put it, like a much more athletic Case Keenum, or even like a Jeff Garcia, for if some of you guys are a little older that remember Jeff Garcia. Just imagine him being left-handed. But he works the short game really well, the intermediate game really well, the middle of the field really well. He can manage a game. He's relatively safe with the ball. He's a pretty good athlete. He can scramble a little bit, moves around in the pocket well. Kind of reminds me of Tua also in a way, not even just because he's lefty, but kind of similar skill set, just probably like dialed back a bit, even though I'm not the biggest Tua guy. But the big issue with him is he's more comfortable making 1-2 quick reads. He's not a guy to sit in the pocket for a long time, deliver a strike downfield, get into his 3rd, 4th progression. And a lot of that just has to do with his physical limitations. He's small. He is quick. He's a good athlete, but underwhelming arm. I think probably the weakest arm out of everyone in this top 10. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just he's going to be limited. A lot of his issues are just physical limitations. Like, if he was 6'2", 220 and had just like a above average arm, he would shoot up like a lot in these rankings, in my opinion. A lot of his issues are just going to be physical limitations. The benefit of someone like him, though, is because he's got some polish to his game. He's experienced, and I think can run an offense where, like a West Coast style, maybe a Shanahan style offense, well, where he can just play ball control, play point guard, get the ball to his playmakers, and be safe with the ball. If he goes to the right situation, he can look really, really good. Like, for example, Cleveland with Kevin Stefanski, because we're gonna kind of be going back to more of the traditional Stefanski style offense. He could be a guy that thrives in something like that. It just depends on if you're comfortable with, taking the risk on that because of his limitations. If he's a lefty, and you just kind of never know with guys like him that are just really undersized and don't have a lot of like top-end physical attributes. So I don't know why I didn't put a round on this screen here, but I would take him mid-late 4th, early 5th. I'd be comfortable in the 4th round. If you see him in the 5th, I would take him. Like, even if you take a quarterback early, if Dillon Gabriel's there in the 5th, I would still take him. Take 2 quarterbacks, screw it. But I like him a little more than some, but he's still only my QB8, so a little more optimistic about him than the previous 2. But QB7, some guys aren't going to like this. I got Will Howard as my QB7. I loved Will Howard. Brought us a national championship, OHIO. But I have to be honest about his risks as a pro quarterback. Main issue, well, let's get into the positives. So, firstly, biggest positive is when it was time for the college football playoff, when it was time to go win games and perform that mattered most, he stepped up. If his entire season looked like his college football playoff performances, he would probably be in the top 5 QBs, maybe like top 4. Looked really, really good, made really good decisions, didn't turn the ball over much, played really tough, put his body on the line when he needed to, made a lot of great throws, and had a bit of a confidence and swagger to him, and really led the team, led that offense effectively, and it was just a really awesome thing to watch as an Ohio State fan, if I'm being honest. But with that, when you look at his regular season, you start to see, and even some bits of the college football playoff, you start to see some of those issues. So, firstly, again, try to get into more of the positives. He's a big-ass quarterback. He's like 6'3", 6'4", 230, huge. Strong, underrated athlete. He's not like super fast, but he can move around. He can get some scrambles in the pocket. He'll surprise you every once in a while, and he's big, so he's a tough runner. So he's not afraid of contact. Makes pretty good decisions. A really underrated game manager. Like normally when you see a big kid, you would think strong arm gunslinger. He really is kind of the opposite, where he's a good game manager. I don't think quite as efficient as like a Dylan Gabriel in terms of that, but right there. Really solid game manager. Like I said, makes good decisions, keeps the ball out of harm's way for the most part. But then you get into the negatives. The top one, the biggest one, is honestly, when you look at a guy that size, that big, his arm talent is kind of just average. There are times where, he can put some air under the ball. He throws a nice deep ball, but like he doesn't have that top tier, like, just grip it and rip it like style that you see a lot of bigger quarterbacks have. Like he doesn't make a lot of tight window throws. He doesn't throw a lot of guys open. No, not a whole lot of like, wow, that was a really crazy throw. So he has the arm of someone like, I'm trying to think of someone to compare it to, like Joe Burrow coming out. A lot of people kind of flacked on him for having like a weaker arm. Like I think Joe Burrow has a stronger arm than Will Howard. I know that's a wonky comparison because Burrow's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but I'm just that specific trait. So just kind of an underwhelming arm. Like obviously he can make most of the throws. He can put a lot of air under the ball, throw a nice teardrop deep ball, but just a lot of high stress, high difficulty, your window to make that throw is closing quick. He doesn't do that a whole lot. He's not a very creative passer. He's very, by the numbers, 1, 2, 3, scramble, throw it away. He doesn't really create a lot of plays, which I mean is fine. That's why I have him graded the way I do. So he can be a little predictable at that. And he's kind of average to below average at getting through his reads. He's not super efficient in getting through. He's fine. That's something that I think can improve in the NFL. But just a little underwhelming in that department. And on top of that, there's the big question mark is how much did he benefit from being at Ohio State with those great running backs, those great receivers, great offensive line, that ridiculous defense we had, which is a really good compliment for a quarterback, is a great defense. How much did he benefit from that? And we're not really going to know that until we see him as a rookie, like maybe even in like the preseason with some of the lower level guys. You're not really going to know. So I think if all things go well, he can come in, manage a game well, make a couple deep shots here and there. I think he can work well out of play action, kind of like in Stefanski's system. So for me, if he's available, I could stomach it if it's early in the 4th round, but preferably later 4th round. If he's there, I'd take him. I think you can mold him a bit. Maybe work on that arm talent. It could be a mechanics thing. It could just be something about how he goes about throwing the ball, where if you kind of work with him a bit, you can unlock a little bit more velocity under the ball. And then if that's the case, then he shoots up a little bit in these rankings for me. But for me, I have him as my QB7. With that, let's move into QB6. This is the most all over the place prospect I've noticed across like some analysts. Like I remember seeing mocks of him going late in the 1st round in some things, but then you have some where he's in like the 5th. Jalen Milroe, Alabama. I like him a lot as a guy you can mold and just really work with for a season or two without getting him on the field too much. For one, he is an extremely high level, ridiculous athlete. He ran at his pro day. He ran like an unofficial 4.37. Even if you say a 4.4, he's immediately one of the fastest quarterbacks of all time. I mean, if you drop him into the NFL right now, I think he's faster than everyone except Lamar. He's not a super twitchy, like agile guy because he's a little bigger, a little stronger. So he's not quite as shifty as some guys, but that straight line speed is ridiculous. And of course, like he is still shifty and he's got some agility to him. He can break a lot of tackles in the scrambling game because he's a little bit of a bigger, thicker kid. Not super tall. He's like 6'1 or 6'2, but just built well, very athletic. I mean, you can just tell by looking at him. And He's got high-level arm strength. Now, I put arm strength as opposed to arm talent. Arm talent and arm strength are a little bit different. You can have really good arm strength, where you can just grip the ball, rip it, flies at 1,000,000 miles an hour, you can throw it 80 yards. But arm talent is the ability to just, at the snap of your hips, flick of a wrist, effortless, put the ball wherever you want to put it. He struggles with that. As I put in here, when his footwork and mechanics are proper, makes a proper step up into the pocket, plants his feet well, mechanics look fluid, he can be pretty accurate. He can make some pretty good throws. But, as I put in the negatives, his footwork and mechanics are all over the place. Very sloppy, definitely the worst of anyone in this top 10. So, very raw talent here. So, there's going to be plays where you look at him and you're like, holy hell, that dude's a running back. But then you have some plays where you look at him, and I thought even in the combine he looked pretty good when he's got his drop correct, steps up, plants his feet correctly, flips the hips, spins it. Looks pretty good. He can be pretty accurate. So this is a guy you just kind of got to mold and work with for a season or two, in my opinion. But like I said, ridiculous dual threat athlete. Like I said, he could drop in and play running back tomorrow, and I think he would start somewhere. But really good scrambler, which is just an added element. And another thing is he has a really strong work ethic. Like, he was a great student in college. I think he got his master's, I want to say, in 4 years, which is insane. And he won like an academic award. I don't know the specifics of it. But he's shown that he will work on things quickly and efficiently to improve them. Like, when you look at his regular season tape at Alabama, like I said, he had inconsistent, wonky mechanics. But then you look at the combine, and you could tell he had really been working to hammer down those mechanics and footwork. And while it was far from perfect, it looked well improved. And I think because of that, there's going to be some teams that are interested in him a little earlier than I would personally take him. But that might be his strongest asset, is his work ethic and his willing to learn and be coachable. And as far as all the interviews and stuff, from what I know, everyone really likes him as a personality, which is something we kind of need in Cleveland right now, to be honest. But in terms of some of his other issues, I already talked about the accuracy and the mechanics being kind of all over the place. He doesn't throw with a lot of touch just because he has that big arm. He just wants to rip everything, and you could kind of see that in the combine. Like, a lot of the short passes, he was firing the ball in there, and it was kind of insane to watch. But that's something that you can just work on. That's something that can be improved. And his decision-making is kind of up and down. He'll force some throws here and there. He'll scramble when he doesn't need to. He'll miss a check down here and there. Again, just something that you can improve on. But in my opinion, this is a kid that you got to draft. In my opinion, early, mid-4th round would be perfect. I think he's going to go earlier than that just because someone's going to fall in love with the physical attributes and take him too early. Like, I could see him going late in the 2nd to some teams. I think that's a bit too rich for me. So early 4th round, mid-4th round would be perfect for me. But this is a kid, he would be perfect to be drafted by a team that already has an older established vet who can be a starter for a season or two. Wouldn't be mad at it if the Browns had Kirk Cousins, just saying. But you draft him, stash him. Have a vet quarterback who can help him along in his progression, get that footwork cleaned up, get his ability to read a defense, make quick, efficient decisions. And he's a guy that he doesn't have to be a full field scanner, traditional, sit in the pocket for a while, let plays develop. He can be 1-2, maybe work to a third, okay, scramble, because of his elite dual threat capability. So if he goes to the right situation, he could turn out, his ceiling is ridiculous. He could turn out to be really, really, really good. I think perfect scenario, that happens for him. He develops like we hope he does. He doesn't start for a season or two. 2 seasons would be great. Comes in, finally starts. He could be top tier for him would be a top 15 quarterback in the league if all works perfectly. He could get there. He could really, really get there. So we'll just have to see. He could also flame out just because of his limitations. He could be a guy who comes in, struggles to develop at all, can't get the footwork and mechanics down, and then he switches to running back or tight end or something like that. I could see that happening too. I hope not. I would love to see him as a quarterback, excel in the league, because he's an exciting guy to watch. But we'll see. Definitely the most all over the place prospect. For me, early mid 4th round would be perfect to take him. But he's a guy I would only take him if the Browns can bring in like a Kirk Cousins or someone like that, even though he's like the only guy left really, where you have him for a season or two to start, who can help someone like Milroe really develop his pocket passing ability. So with that, we'll move into our top 5, my top 5 I should say. My QB 5, this one surprised me honestly, Kyle McCord. As I stated, I'm an Ohio State fan. And Kyle McCord was not very good at Ohio State. Like, he wasn't as awful as some people say he was, but he was pretty awful in a lot of big moments. He lacked confidence. You could tell he second-guessed himself all the time. He made very little big throws. It seemed like he kind of just shrunk in Ohio State. He had all that talent around him, and he just crumbled. There was a reason he transferred after 1 year. Will Howard comes in and immediately goes and wins a national championship with arguably not quite as good of an offense around him, aside from them adding Quinshon Judkins. But then he transfers to Syracuse. He's in the ACC. Still plays high-level competition, not quite as high level as Big Ten. Has a significantly worse supporting cast around him. And that's not a knock against Syracuse. They're just not Ohio State. But there was like a switch that flipped. He came in so much more confident, much better mentality, and he really unlocked that gunslinger potential in him because he has a pretty good arm. Is it top tier? No. But it's pretty good. Like, he can make all the throws you need. He can make some difficult throws. And he's got that, as I put here, that gamer, gunslinger, will to win mentality where he's gonna fire off some passes that some guys wouldn't. And he's gonna make some throws that will surprise you. And I think a lot of people don't realize that about McCord. He's got decent size. He played a pro-style scheme, too, at Syracuse, which always helps rookies that get them a little more established once they get into the league, let them pick up stuff a little more often. But my biggest thing is the fact that he improved so drastically from 2023 to 2024. To me, that shows high work ethic. He was very aware of his issues in Ohio State, and to me that means he's going to come into the pros ready to learn, ready to develop. And again, if he goes to the right situation with a veteran ahead of him to help him along the way, he can be a guy, maybe sits for a year, comes and starts, pretty solid quarterback. Reads the field well. He's a guy that will sit in the pocket, let plays develop, was not afraid of the pressure closing in on him in the pocket. He'll navigate it well enough, and he'll grip it and rip it, man. He can make some really exciting-looking throws. But with that does come some of the negatives. So with that gunslinger mentality, he does throw some scary-looking interceptions. He's kind of got that Jameis Winston to him in a way. Maybe not quite as extreme as Jameis, but he'll try to make some throws that only Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen could. Like, he will try to make some passes that are just a little bit too out of his league. He's got a good arm, not a ridiculous top 1% arm. So because of that, he'll throw a little too many interceptions than you'd like, and he'll have some incompletions that are just like, dude, why did you try that? Just take the check down. But that can be coached out of him. Obviously, you want that gunslinger style from him. That's what made him so much better at Syracuse, is that confidence and ability to make those big time throws, but maybe dial it back a couple percent to avoid some of those interceptions. He's a guy that will throw some pick sixes. He'll throw some interceptions in the red zone. You're just going to have to live with it. He's going to turn the ball over a little bit more than you'd like. But I'm confident that the right coaching staff could work that out of him. He's also not the best athlete, kind of an average athlete, not very fast. And when he does scramble out of the pocket, that's when his decision-making really kind of falls off. He will try to make some stupid throws, throw it across his body, throw it back into coverage in the middle of the field. And when you don't need that. As you want him to be safer. So his big things are not a great athlete, can be really reckless with the ball and kind of relies on his just raw arm ability a bit too much. But I think if you can work with the bigger arm he does have, if he's well coachable, like it seems like, really learns, sits behind a vet for a year, and really kind of works some of those issues out of his game a bit. I think he can be a decent starter in the league. Best case scenario. Worst case, he's a really good backup, in my opinion. So late 3rd round, early 4th round, if he's there, I'd be more than happy for Cleveland to take him if we didn't take a guy earlier. Now, QB4, Tyler Shough. This might be my personal favorite quarterback in the draft. Obviously, I'm well aware he's not like the best. That's why he's QB4. But I have a bit of a hot take. If he did not have his injury history and he was 22 instead of going to be 26, I think he'd be QB1 in this draft. Big guy, built kind of like Jared Goff. He's really tall, not super thick, but like built enough. He's like 6'5", like 220, I think. And he's got a really good arm. One of the best arms in this class. I would say when you combine like arm strength and arm talent, like I was saying earlier, I'd probably throw him second in the draft behind Cam Ward. Really good arm. Pretty disciplined, a lot of polish to his game, and that comes from all that college experience. He was in college for 1,000 years. He was Justin Herbert's backup at freaking Oregon. That's how long he's been in college. Like I said, really disciplined, reads the field relatively well, makes decent decisions, and he can make just about any throw you want him to. He's another guy that when you look at some of his big-time throws, it really, you look at him and you're like, you'd think, wow, this guy's the best quarterback in the class if you don't know anything about him. So that's the main thing with him, just well-experienced, underrated athlete. He ran like a 4.6, sub 4.6 40. So he is not very agile. He's not like the most mobile guy. I put that in there. He's got really good like straight line speed, but he's not going to kill you scrambling. He wants to stay in the pocket for sure. But when you give him a clean pocket, he might be the best quarterback in the class. Big arm, makes all the throws. Super underrated. Now you have the problems. So for one, as I said, when you put him in a clean pocket, really, really good. But again, similar to like a Jared Goff, kind of reminds me of Jared Goff. If you can't tell, when he's under duress and you put him under a lot of pressure, he breaks down. Like his mechanics break down a bit. He starts to make poor decisions. He'll throw some errors when you don't need him to. He'll prematurely let a play die when he doesn't need to. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that he's got hurt so many damn times. That's probably the biggest concern. He's played one full season as a starter in college football, despite having been in college since like 2019 or 2020. Had season-ending injuries in 2021, 2022, and 2023. I believe they were all season-ending. If not, they were all notable, significant injuries. And because of that, he got a lot of extra eligibility. That's why he's going to be a 26-year-old rookie at the start of the regular season. So because of that, I think because of the injury history, that kind of causes some of his ability to wilt under pressure and crumble a bit, which is concerning. And he's definitely a kid you'd want with a really good offensive line, which is why I'm a little up and down about Cleveland, just because we really don't know about our offensive line. But if we could figure it out, I'd love to take him in like the early mid-third round like I have here. But again, because he's going to be a 26-year-old rookie, he's probably not going to get a whole lot better than he already is right now. So I think he's got like a really high floor, but a really low ceiling. Like I think he could come in, give him a clean pocket. He's got enough weapons around him, and he has a good defense. I think he can come in and play really well. I think he could come in and have the best immediate play out of any rookie in this class with the right situation. But because of his age, he's probably going to be capped out at like year 1 or 2. He's probably not going to be any better than that, which can be a little concerning if you're looking for a franchise quarterback. So to me, and this is weird to say because he's a rookie, but he's like a really good like bridge quarterback. Like normally you don't say that about rookies, but he's got a lot of experience. He's 26 years old. He's a guy you could draft, like I said, in the early mid-third round. Start him earlier than most other guys, and he'll play well enough and he'll hold down that spot until you find a guy early in the draft that is just that plus level franchise potential elite quarterback in a future draft. So that's why I'd be comfortable taking him in like that early mid-third round, and just seeing what he's got, seeing if he can stay healthy, seeing if you can unlock anything else in his game. But he's just the riskiest quarterback in this class, aside from maybe Milroe, because of all those injuries, the issues under pressure, the fact that he's going to be 26 at the beginning of the season. But as I said, he's got a really good arm, makes every throw, he's disciplined under a clean pocket, reads a defense well. very polished, sound pocket passer. So, very intriguing. That's why I like him a lot. That's why he might be my favorite kind of guy I'm really rooting for in this class. Like I said, if he was 22 and didn't have his injury history, he might be QB1, honestly, for me. That might be a hot take. That's definitely a hot take, but either way, let's move on. QB3, Jackson Dart. This guy I think will kind of fool people. I think he'll kind of make people think he's like this gunslinger that can go in and make a lot of high-level throws, and kind of similar to how I was talking about Kyle McCord at like a higher level even. But when you actually watch him play, not quite that. He's got a decent arm, not like a high-level arm. He can make all the general throws, but he's not going to make a lot of top-end difficult passes you would expect out of a potential franchise quarterback. Which is why I think some of the people thinking he's going to go in the first round, it's like kind of insane to me. He's pretty accurate. He works pretty well in the middle of the field. He is a high-level competitor. He's got like some of that it factor to him, that a little bit of that Baker Mayfield to him, where he's very hard-nosed, do anything to win. Did play in the SEC for 3 years as a starter. Plenty of great competition he's played against. He's played well against some high-level teams. He's played poor against some high-level teams. His footwork is kind of a little lazy, a little inconsistent. He'll rely on like his arm a little bit too much. He kind of struggles with some of the deeper zone coverages. I could see him, trying to make a mid-level like dig and missing a safety, screaming down and throwing an interception. I don't have a whole lot to really elaborate on with him. He's just kind of a tad underwhelming for me. So for me, he kind of does remind me like if you took Baker Mayfield, but just notched down his physical ability to like 70%. Because Baker, while he's a little undersized, but he has one of the biggest arms in the league. He can make a lot of high-level throws when you need him to. Jackson Dart doesn't quite have that. I think his ceiling is more limited than people think. But he's another guy where if you can come in and you can kind of get some of that game manager tendencies put in him a little bit, because he plays and thinks like he has a high-level arm and can make some of those high-level throws, when at least from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like that really. I think he can play well in the middle of the field. He can make some deep high-level throws, but just those really top-end difficult, really got to rip it in there, franchise quarterback, elite level throws. He doesn't really have that, and I don't think he ever will. But I think like I said, he's played against plenty of high-level competition. He's got a decent arm. He's pretty accurate. Works really well in the middle of the field. I think if you can get him to kind of dial back his decision-making a little bit, get him a little more comfortable working in that short middle of the field range, limit his deep ball attempts while you develop him, I think he can play pretty well. I think he could be a mid-lower-end starter. I would have Shug over him easily if it wasn't for Tyler Shug's like injury and age issues. But Dart's a guy where if he's there late in the second round, I'm comfortable taking him. I'm sorry, my analysis on him isn't as in-depth as some of the other guys. He's just kind of underwhelming, but I think can play well in the right kind of system. Kind of reminds me like a little more athletic like Andy Dalton in a way. I'm sure some people won't like that, but whatever. Mid-late second round, I would take him. But as we get to my top two quarterbacks, QB2 and QB1's really close for me. My decision on who I have as QB2 and QB1 kind of has to do with specifically the Browns situation. So, with that context, my QB2 is Cam Ward. Most people have him as QB1. I have him as my QB2. So, firstly, really, really solid arm talent. Can make every throw. Has a big arm. Can make a lot of difficult throws. Pretty good athlete. He's not like a super burner, but he's pretty athletic. He can scramble, get you some extra yards. He's mobile. Can make some good throws on the run. He does have a bit of. A lot of people saw like the funny videos of him looking like he's just standing still in the pocket, but he is very relaxed and calm under pressure. He doesn't allow it to really frazzle him too much, which is really good for a rookie. He can create a lot of passing windows. because of his ability to kind of change his arm mechanics. He can kind of flick his wrist at an awkward angle and make a throw you don't expect. He has some of those high-level, top-end throws in him. Does he have all of them? No, but I think he can make some. And on top of that, he has that gunslinger mentality. He's willing to rip it into some difficult places. And while that can cause some area of concern, I'd rather a guy have that than be hyper-conservative, you know what I'm saying? So, like I said, really good arm, good athlete, makes a lot of high-level throws. But my issues with Cam, and a lot of this is kind of specific to Cleveland, he doesn't play in structure very much. Not saying he can't, but I have some concerns about his fit in an offense like Cleveland. I feel like he plays a lot of hero ball. Kind of has like that Carson Wentz syndrome, especially late in his Eagles career, where he'll just try to put the team on his back and look for a big play and create something out of nothing a little bit too much. He very often will not take what the defense gives you when that's really valuable sometimes. Look at the top guys in the league, like Tom Brady, greatest quarterback of all time. He will take what the defense gives you. He will pick you apart little by little butter knife stabs over and over until eventually he goes for the kill. Cam Ward has like almost none of that in him. He's always looking for the big play, the big throw, and I can see a lot of 3-and-outs being caused like that. He can throw some interceptions when unneeded, and he can be kind of frustrating at times. Now, if he's coached well and he goes to the right situation, you can kind of get some of that out of him. But I kind of have a feeling that that's kind of just always going to be how he is. And with that, his mechanics are a little bit inconsistent. Not like as bad as some other guys, but sometimes he'll kind of overlay on the arm. He'll throw a little flat-footed when he shouldn't. But that's a lot. That's a bit of a smaller issue compared to the rest. If I was a team like the Giants with Daboll and that like more aggressive, vertical passing system, I would take Cam Ward over like Shedeur Sanders or anyone else, or at least where they're at. But for a team like Cleveland that's going to want to run the ball a lot, they're going to want to run a lot of play action, heavier sets, play kind of ball control point guard. I don't know if Cam Ward can do that. I feel like he's going to struggle with that. If he comes into Cleveland, starts immediately, I see a lot of frustrations on offense where we're leaving a lot on the bone that we could have chewed, you know what I'm saying? And because that, I could see him losing us some games if we did take him. So that's why I just don't feel comfortable with him as my QB1. Again, good prospect, like I said. He has a great arm. He can make a lot of great throws. And with certain systems, the Giants was my top example, he could come in and play really, really well, be a top 10 level quarterback. But certain systems, like I said, I feel like he could come into Cleveland and he kind of has a hard time grasping a completely different style of play, more of a West Coast Shanahan style. And I could see it being a little bit of a shock to his system, and he never really develops into what you hope for. And then we're moving on from him after 2 seasons and looking for a quarterback again. So, for me, I think taking him at 2 is kind of insane, just because I think this quarterback class is a few pegs down compared to some other recent ones. But if he's there late in the first, if he falls for whatever reason, and the Browns trade back in to get him, I'm fine with that. If he's there late in the first, or if somehow he's early in the second round, I'd take him in a heartbeat. So for me, just as a grade, to me he's a late first, early second prospect. He's going to go probably first overall to the Titans, and I'm rooting for him. I hope he plays well. But I think he would be perfect with the Giants. If he slipped to the Giants or if the Giants traded up, then I'd be kind of intrigued. I still think it's too early, but I would be a little intrigued. I'm like, this guy could make some noise in New York. But with that, due to process of elimination, I'm sure you guys know, my QB1 is ultimately Shedeur Sanders. And again, a lot of this has to do with the fact that I think he will fit in Cleveland really, really well. He's accurate, throws pretty good timing-wise. He can play on time. He's composed. He makes generally good decisions, and he can manage a game really, really well. He plays that ball control, get the ball to your playmakers really well. He will occasionally try to make a big throw. He'll have a little bit of gunslinger in him, very rarely, and you want that in a guy like that. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm okay with giving up a couple deep passes here and there that may be a little bit irrational. I'd rather have that than not. He's a tough kid. He was under pressure a lot in Colorado, and I think he developed some bad pocket habits because of it, but I think you can work that out of him. And he's also, this kid's been under the spotlight since he was in high school. Obviously, look at his last name. He's Deion's kid. I think some of the stuff about Deion and wanting him to not play with certain teams, I think that's a bit overblown. I'm really not that worried about it. But he's been under the spotlight for forever, and I think he can handle it well. So I think when you get drafted to a team like Cleveland, where our fans, we are going to put expectations on you immediately, and you're going to be held with a lot of scrutiny and at a high tier of expectation, I think he'll be fine, honestly. Like, I don't think it's going to rattle him very much compared to some of these other guys. So I'm just really confident in him to come in, make good decisions, put the ball in the hands of playmakers, won't turn the ball over a ton, and just will occasionally take some of those deep shots. Now, with some of his negatives, firstly, he's not the athlete you would think he is. You look at the last name Sanders and you automatically think, 4.5 speed, really agile, good scrambler. No, he's a decent athlete. He's got okay speed. He's going to get ran down by some high-level defensive linemen. But I think he can create space when he needs to. He's not going to be a scrambling threat, aside from rarely so often. So I feel like people need to tone their expectations with that a bit. I think some people think he's a way better athlete than he actually is. He's not. He's a pocket passer. He does not have that top-end arm talent. He's not going to make that top 10% of throws. That's something Cam Ward has over him. He doesn't have a super-duper strong arm. I would put his arm in a similar area as, like I said earlier about Joe Burrow. How, like, for example, you look at Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Now, I'm not saying Sheddeur's going to be Joe Burrow, but just using this as an example. Joe does not have a very big arm. He can make all the necessary throws. He can throw a good deep ball. He can throw with enough velocity. But if he's, rolling to the left and you want him to flip his hips and throw it back across the other side of the field, 30, 40 yards downfield and put it on the money, he's not going to do that. Sheddeur's not going to do that. You're not going to get that out of him. So there is a slight limit to his ceiling. So I don't think he could ever be one of those elite quarterbacks, high level. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be as good as a Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Herbert, Lamar. Do I think he can be in that Jalen Hurts tier? Yeah, I think he can do that. And he just won a Super Bowl. I think he can come in, be a top 12. Some years he'll be a top 10. Some years more top 15 level quarterback. And I think he can come in and manage a game really well, make some higher end throws here and there, but I think you can manage him really well. He does take sacks a bit too often because of some of his pocket tendencies. He drifts a bit in the pocket where he'll kind of move himself into pressure when he's not realizing it. He's got a little bit of a obliviousness to him with some of that sometimes. But I think some of that is because of Colorado's offensive line issues, where some of that kind of was put into him, where I feel like if he's gets drafted in the pros, has a decent enough line around him, you can coach some of that out of him. So I'm just more confident in Shedeur. He doesn't have that top-end ceiling, which is why I wouldn't take him early in the first round. But if I had to take a quarterback at 2, like we're just rolling with Kenny Pickett and say we sign Carson Wentz, I would take Shedeur at 2, if I had to. I don't want to. To me, best case scenario is we take a Abdul Carter at 2 or a Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter would be interesting to pair with him because obviously that's his teammate. And then he starts to slip into the mid-late teens in the first round. Then I would get on the phone with like Seattle or maybe try to jump Pittsburgh or something like that. Or if he gets past Pittsburgh, even better. And if you can get him late in that first round, I would be ecstatic. So that's why I have that late first, early second round grade on him. If he's there at 33, I would lose my mind. I would take him immediately. But I think you'd prefer him late in the first round because you get that extra fifth-year option, I think, that you only get on first-round players. But to me, he's the best prospect for Cleveland. And that's why he's my QB1. Go over it again. He's accurate, plays well under time, plays with good timing, plays under structure well. I think he can play that point guard role, like I said, get the ball to his playmakers, make good decisions. He's been under the spotlight, so I think he'll remain composed and not crack under the Cleveland fans and Cleveland media if he is here, or even any other teams. He just does lack that top-end arm talent He's not the best athlete like you'd think he is, and that does limit his ceiling a bit. So I think for him, best case scenario, we take him mid-late first round or early second if he's somehow there. I don't think he'll be there. He's going to get taken early most likely. That'd be great if he slipped, though. I'd be happy with that. But best case, he comes in. He's going to be consistently in that top 20, top 15 conversation. He'll have some seasons where he's top 12, top 10. And I think you can win a Super Bowl with that if you put the right team around him. You saw that with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts is not one of those top elite level quarterbacks, but he's a good quarterback. And he has some flaws, but when you put the right team around him, put the right playmakers, give him a good defense, good coaching, you can make it happen. We just saw it happen. So, with that, those were my top 10 rookie quarterbacks. I'm curious to see what you guys think. I'm sure Austin will have some comments about certain guys. I know he hates Kyle McCord, so he's going to be like, why'd you put McCord so high? That's why I'm making it very obvious. These are my picks. I don't know what Austin's picks would be. He doesn't know as much about some of the lower end guys. That's why I felt more comfortable with just me doing this. But I'm sure he'll have his input. But I appreciate you guys for listening to me ramble for another hour about these rookies. I'm really excited for the draft. I'm really nervous. This is really unpredictable just because of the weaker QB class. You never know what's going to happen. So I'm really excited. And I'm really excited to discuss with you guys what you guys think about these rankings, some of the other guys in the draft. I'd like to do a video with like a best case scenario mock draft. I'll like put together, talk with Austin about and stuff. But yeah, we'll be back soon with some more content. We're back at it like we already said. But yeah, I appreciate you guys for listening. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the rankings. And yeah, we will see you guys in the next one. Cold takes from the lab.